Today's top stories at NBR: National's COVID-19 response spokesperson's preference for vaccination status as part of the COVID Tracer app, monetary incentives to encourage employees to get vaxxed, a solar energy startup seeking $4 million, and there's more coming right up. Kia ora and welcome to NBR Today, a wrap of the day's top business stories from the authority in New Zealand business news since 1970, nbr.co.nz. It's Thursday, September 9th. I'm Paul Brennan. Thanks again for joining us. Rocket Lab has reported revenue of US $29.5 million for the first half of 2021, an increase of 237% compared with the same period in 2020, but is suffering under New Zealand's COVID restrictions. In its first results briefing since it listed publicly on the US Nasdaq exchange under the ticker RKLB on August 25th, the New Zealand-founded space and launch systems company reported a net loss of US $32.5 million for the 6 months to the end of June, widening from US $23.5 million in the first half of 2020. Addressing the market on a call this morning, founder, chair and CEO Peter Beck and CFO Adam Spice said the company expected revenue of between $4 and $5 million US in the third quarter due to COVID restrictions in New Zealand, and between US $17 and $20 million in Q4, assuming those restrictions ease prior to the end of September. The National Party believes it's inevitable that entry to public venues such as cafes, bars and restaurants will become dependent on a person's vaccination status. National's COVID-19 response spokesperson Chris Bishop said his preference was for people's vaccination status to be included as part of the COVID-19 Tracer app so they could prove they were fully vaccinated. Chris Bishop joined NBR political editor Brent Edwards.
And it may be that once we've got to a point, where, 75-80% of the country or the eligible population is vaccinated, going into 2022, there may well be bars or cafes or large events that just want to voluntarily impose that rule in and of themselves. So they say, we're actually just going to accept doubly vaccinated punters in our establishment on the basis that we want to be a safe and welcoming environment.
National's COVID-19 response spokesperson Chris Bishop with NBR political editor Brent Edwards. Business NZ says proposed legislation on decommissioning of oil and gas fields represents a fundamental change to how business is conducted and is likely to have a chilling effect on the attractiveness of New Zealand as an investment destination. And industry representative Energy Resources Aotearoa says the problems with the bill are so significant that the government needs to go back to the drawing board. The Crown Minerals Decommissioning and Other Matters Amendment Bill would amend the Crown Minerals Act 1991 to reduce the risk to the Crown and other third parties of having to carry out and fund decommissioning. Business NZ Chief Executive Kirk Hope told a Parliamentary Select Committee today that although his organisation supported the strengthening and clarification of decommissioning obligations, it opposed the bill's retrospective nature and the perpetual obligations and liabilities imposed on current permit and licence holders. Up Education is offering monetary incentives of up to $200 to encourage its more than 1,000 employees to get fully vaccinated against COVID-19. The company, which rebranded as Up in 2019 after selling its ACG schools business, has staff on about 30 campuses across New Zealand and Australia, including 10 vocational and higher education providers, along with 6 university partnerships. Chief Executive Mark Rushworth says its Roll Up Your Sleeves vaccination initiative provided information, support and encouragement to consider the role of vaccinations in the fight against COVID-19. A solar energy startup is seeking $4 million to help fund its plans to connect 1,500 dairy farms to the national grid over the next 5 years. Canterbury-based SOLAGRI Energy has a pilot system using solar panels and batteries to power a dairy shed outside Rangiora. Managing Director Peter Saunders said a growing queue of farmers are waiting to get involved and the company is seeking investment to build scale. The technology is advanced, but the model is pretty simple, Saunders said, who spent most of his working life in the wine industry before co-founding SOLAGRI 4 years ago. The full details of those stories and more are at nbr.co.nz right now. Tomorrow at NBR, in Hunter's Corner, Tim Hunter writes about a suspended accountant and a conspiracy theory, and we look at a new model for business syndicated investments. I'm Paul Brennan. I look forward to being with you again around lunchtime tomorrow for the morning's NBR trending stories. Then same time, same place, again tomorrow from 5:30 and right through the weekend for another NBR This Week.